Back when I was spending my days coughing up coronavirus-infused phlegm, a pretty notable event hit the news cycle. It came and went, and now nobody even thinks about it anymore, beyond the occasional meme. I'm talking about the attack on former Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi's husband, Paul Pelosi. One of the good things about being bedridden is that I can actually examine this event with some distance and objectivity, unlike every other monkey who just spits out whatever was the most politically convenient take for them. Alternatively, I could also just be writing an older script that I was too sick to finish, in order to recoup some lost work hours. Who's to say? Here's the official account of what happened. David DePape, a Canadian, don't go blaming us for this, guys, broke into Nancy Pelosi's house by smashing through glass-paneled doors in the back. Nancy wasn't home, but her husband, Paul Pelosi, was asleep in a third-floor bedroom. DePape's activities woke up Paul, and when confronted, DePape said that he wanted to speak to Nancy. Paul said she wasn't home, and DePape replied, "I'll wait." Paul claimed that he had to go to the bathroom, and once alone, he called 911. With the line open, he began to loudly ask, "Why are you here? What are you going to do to me?" which prompted the dispatcher to send the cops. Once the police arrived, they knocked on the door. Paul opened it and began to struggle with DePape in the doorway over a hammer in DePape's hands. The cops told both men to drop the weapon, but DePape won the struggle and cracked Paul over the head with it. Shortly after, DePape was tackled by the cops. It was discovered that he had on him zip ties, duct tape, rope, a second hammer, gloves, and a list of targets. Paul Pelosi was taken to the hospital for surgery to treat the skull fracture that the hammer blow had caused. He remained out of the public eye until a week ago, where he finally appeared at an official event with his wife. The extent of his injuries were enough that he had to wear a hat to conceal them. Statements given to the police by DePape reveal that the attack was politically motivated, though I'm not sure you needed to think too hard to figure that out. DePape sees Nancy Pelosi as the leader of the pack of liars that is the Democratic Party, and his actions were to fight tyranny. His plan was to kidnap and interrogate Pelosi, specifically that he would break her kneecaps if she didn't tell the truth, so that she would have to appear in public in a wheelchair. He also considered his mission to be a suicidal one. And nobody else is going to say it, so I will. This guy looks like Giga Chad if he had Down syndrome. Though the police hadn't known about DePape before the attack, which is a bit surprising considering how often the feds have somebody on their radar but still fail to stop them in time, we actually do know quite a bit about DePape's life before the event. He migrated to the US after high school and resurfaced with public nudist activist Gypsy Taub in Hawaii. At some point, they entered into a relationship, and when Taub moved to San Francisco, DePape followed. Taub became a prominent figure in public nudity activism, and by 2013, when Taub was at the height of her fame and recognition, DePape was often seen among her entourage. However, also by 2013, Taub and DePape had broken up. DePape seems to have continued hanging around her because she was a rising star in that community, and he still gained some influence through her, but also probably because he still had feelings for her. He was the groomsman in her wedding to someone else, and for a while, he lived in the same house as Taub, her husband, and her 3 children, selling hemp bracelets to make money. Taub and DePape would continue an on-off relationship until 2015, when Taub finally broke it off for good. At that point, DePape became homeless. He had already been struggling with various mental health problems ever since leaving high school, but while homeless, things really began to get worse for him. He exhibited paranoia, megalomania, and drug abuse while with Taub, but it all went overdrive after he joined San Francisco's homeless population. By the time of the attack on Paul Pelosi, he had managed to make his way to Richmond, renting out a garage to live in and working as a handyman. The entire activist group that DePape had associated with in the 2000s and early 2010s had fully collapsed by 2017, and its members have all suffered similar fates as DePape: mental health problems, drugs, poverty, and run-ins with the law. Gypsy Taub herself was arrested in 2019 and tossed in jail in 2021 for attempted child abduction, stalking, and child abuse of a 14-year-old boy who had been friends with one of her sons. Taub had been trying to convince the boy to run away from his family and join hers. Gypsy Taub, who is now in her 50s, seems to have always enjoyed the company of young men. DePape was 20 when they were first spotted together in real life, and her former husband was also 20 at the time of their marriage, though there is shaky evidence that she had contact with both of them when they were still underage. In DePape's case, through the internet, as he was still in Canada at the time. DePape's family said that after high school, DePape followed a woman to the United States and vanished. This is just my opinion because the evidence is incomplete, but Gypsy Taub sounds like a pedophile and a pervert who liked the idea of having sexual access to a stable of underage boys and barely legal men, and her partners, and her activists are all now leading ruined lives of substance abuse, sexual degeneracy, and incarceration. That's not to say that I think DePape's innocent of what he did to Paul Pelosi, like it's all Taub's fault or something. No, he's still responsible. But considering how conspiracy-brained their group was, with 9/11 truther shit and God knows what else, I am not surprised this is where DePape ended up. DePape's social media use gives us insight into the conspiracy claims. Initially, his blog posts were all about lefty-style hippy-dippy spirituality, use of psychedelics, that sort of stuff. This led him down a far-left rabbit hole, where he began to get into the anti-government 9/11 truther stuff that is common at the fringes of politics on all sides. He emerged on the far right, stating in a blog post made a month before the attack that Gamergate had radicalized him. You know, I'm never gonna not laugh at Gamergate getting brought up in the year of our Lord 2022. All gamers did was tell feminist journos to stop being corrupt fucks a decade ago, and since then, it's become a global boogeyman for the leftoids. Guys, if Nancy Pelosi would just stop sucking off journalists for positive coverage, this could have all been avoided. It's incredible how delusional these people are. Okay, let's actually consider the claim though. Is it possible that Gamergate radicalized DePape, as so many of these bottom-of-the-barrel game journos like to claim? The answer is probably not. Though Gamergate did have its more radical elements, who went on to do more radical political activism, most notably Milo. Most people who talked about Gamergate stuff didn't actually care about political radicalism. They weren't there to subvert the movement and take it over. They were actually legitimately talking about either the ethical concerns or the feminist push into the gaming space. That second one is certainly political, but I don't think that seeing some corrupt video game feminists acting shitty is what caused DePape to pick up a hammer and whack Paul Pelosi over the head a decade later. If I had to guess, literally every other influence throughout his fucked up life had more to do with it than Gamergate. There's a populist pipeline that moves people around the fridges of politics without them ever actually crossing through the liberal conservative center. If your baseline point of view is, I don't trust any of society's institutions by default, everyone and everything is always corrupt and there's no fixing it within the system, it's very easy for socialists to become fascists, to become libertarians, and vice versa, simply by switching the targets of their ire. Their reasoning remains the same, they've simply changed what team they play for. That's not to say that there's never a time to distrust an institution, there certainly is, and we need the corrective mechanism of the fringes for the center to function, but the problems begin to start when the fringes become mainline politics. It's for this reason that I think DePape's very unorthodox life led him down a conspiracy rabbit hole. And when the popular conspiracies were predominantly left-wing hippie drug bullshit, he was a leftist. And when those conspiracies shifted towards right-wing QAnon bullshit, he became a rightist. Had he stayed out of trouble long enough to see another political realignment, he likely would have gone down that path along with it. So when the leftoids say that DePape was radicalized by Gamergate, that's clearly just cope. But it's not like the rightoids weren't huffing their own copium on this case as well. Hillary Clinton posted on Twitter, the Republican Party and its mouthpieces now regularly spread hate and deranged conspiracy theories. It is shocking, but not surprising, that violence is the result. As citizens, we must hold them accountable for their words and the actions that follow. Elon Musk replied with this now deleted tweet. There is a tiny possibility there might be more to this story than meets the eye, with a link to an article on the Santa Monica Observer. You can tell that this is a tabloid rag just by the length of the headline. The awful truth. Paul Pelosi was struck on the head with a hammer by a lunatic early Friday morning. Paul Pelosi stated that he doesn't know who the male is, but he advised that his name is David and that he's a friend. Yeah, right. Jesus. Alright, let's take a look. Authorities have changed their story of the Friday morning break-in at the Pelosi's home several times, making it more difficult to understand this strange and heinous crime. Authorities now call the idea that the two men knew each other ridiculous, but none of the various versions explain how suspect and victim ended up holding the same hammer in front of the police, or why they didn't shoot and kill the suspect before he struck Paul Pelosi. As Megyn Kelly said, I smell a rat here, meaning the various stories don't add up. Why was DePape in his underwear? Why were none of these security cameras working? What happened to the third-party witness who was there in the first version of events? Who opened the door to let in the police? Why did DePape, a psychopathic criminal, grant Pelosi a bathroom break, during which he called 911 and described DePape as a friend? Why didn't Pelosi lock himself in the bathroom until the San Francisco Police Department arrived? Was there a third person at the 7-bedroom residence? And what happened to that person? On the right, there's a belief that DePape was actually the secret gay lover of Paul Pelosi. Their fight was a lover's spat, and that the whole thing is just a massive cover-up of that scandal, due to the 2022 midterms being just around the corner at the time. The issue is, none of that seems to be true. There's memes about how the window DePape broke to enter the house had glass on the outside, so clearly it wasn't from someone breaking in. But that's just not true. If you've ever broken a window, you should know that not all of the glass goes in with the force of the break. In fact, some will be expelled back out due to that same force. It's kind of like ripples in the surface of the water, where the first wave after you toss something into the water rises above the surface due to displacement. And you know what? Rightoids should know this. I know you guys have autistically examined riot footage of Antifa goons smashing shit up, and there's always glass on the outside of the windows that they break. But the glass contention is the only part of this alternative story that is based on physical evidence. The rest of it comes from that shitty Santa Monica article, which is of dubious trustworthiness trustworthiness. I know that Dinesh D'Souza, Steve Bannon, Elon Musk, and a bunch of other people have repeated the claim, but they all got their claims from this one source. And here is what that source reads. Okay, so here's the theory, as related to me by a source. Castro nudists are a group of really radical gay male prostitutes that parade around naked with cock rings. First of all, the police did not come in response to an alarm. They came in response to a wellness check. So someone had to call them to check on Pelosi. When Pelosi didn't answer the phone, the cops broke the sliding glass door to get in. Pelosi was struggling with his suspect, who was in his underwear, related to this guy by a source. Come on, guys. If you shit on mainstream journals for saying that an anonymous source told me the story, and I can't tell you who it is, but it's totally true, how could you possibly trust this buffoon? Well, to me, the answer is obvious. The right can be just as ideologically motivated as the left to believe stories that help them and discard stories that hurt them, regardless of the truth. And of course, being signal boosted by big-name rightoids on Twitter also helps. But there's just no evidence here. There's no evidence that anyone was in their underwear. DePape was dressed and Pelosi was in his pajamas. There's no evidence that it was a secret gay meetup. There's no evidence that there was a third person in the house. No evidence that DePape was working as a Castro nudist prostitute. That just seems to be a weird game of telephone style misinterpretation of his past as a leftist nudist activist. The claim that Pelosi said DePape was a friend on the 911 call is also false, as both the FBI's investigation into the call confirmed that Pelosi didn't know who DePape was. And Pelosi also later stated to the police in the ambulance that he had never seen DePape before. Some of this stuff is actually excusable. During the initial hours of a breaking story, there's often jumbled, contradictory information, and we can generally expect the truth to shake out as more info is revealed. Many news outlets reported on some of this stuff, only to issue backtracks and apologies as new information became available. For example, this report from MSNBC repeated a Department of Justice claim that the police, not Pelosi, opened the front door.
After a knock and announce, the front door was opened by Mr. Pelosi. The 82-year-old did not immediately declare an emergency or try to leave his home, but instead began walking several feet back into the foyer toward the assailant and away from police. It's unclear if the 82-year-old was already injured or what his mental state was, say sources. According to court documents, when the officer asked what was going on, defendant smiled and said everything's good. But instantaneously, a struggle ensued as police clearly saw David DePape strike Paul Pelosi in the head with a hammer. After tackling the suspect, officers rushed to Mr. Pelosi, who was lying in a pool of blood.
What we do know is he brutally attacked Mr. Pelosi and attempted to kill him.
Why Pelosi didn't try to flee or tell responding officers he was in distress is unclear.
Fear takes over. Fear freezes people.
It came out later that the DOJ was incorrect, and police body cam footage showed that Pelosi opened the front door instead. The online right took this to mean that now that the midterms are over, the real story about Pelosi's hidden gay relationship was finally going to come out. But while that made for a funny meme, it never actually happened. The body cam footage hasn't yet been made public, likely due to legal reasons related to evidence in the upcoming trial. But everyone who's watched it says that Pelosi answered the door, he was acting erratically, likely out of fear, and then got smashed in the head by DePape's hammer. Now, it is possible that they're all just lying, that all of these sources are keeping what was really on the body cam footage secret. The politicians, the cops, the FBI, all the news outlets, the journos, everyone, they're all colluding to cover it all up. And until we see the body cam footage for ourselves, we can't truly know. But frankly, I doubt it. It doesn't seem plausible to me. The leaps of logic are just too great. I feel like the body cam footage is going to be released at some point, once it's legally possible, or get leaked. So all we gotta do is wait it out. I might have my foot in my mouth in this one, but I don't think so, especially since most of the evidence lines up with my interpretation of events. DePape isn't Paul Pelosi's secret gay lover. He's just a conspiracy-brained populoid who has entirely fucked his life up with nearly 25 years of bad decisions, and an innocent old man has paid the price for it. People are also saying that Nancy Pelosi's decision to step down as Democratic House leader is also a result of the attack, and therefore that, in some way, DePape got at least a little bit of what he wanted. But I don't buy this either. Nancy Pelosi looks like a walking fucking corpse, guys. Dude, look at that shadow. How do her eyes even stay in her head? It's time for her to start winding down, guys. No conspiracy needed on this one. She's got one foot in the grave, and the other one's made out of plastic. I've always found Nancy Pelosi to be kind of cringe personally. Her policies can be hit and miss, but as a person, she just seems slimy. And all of that Dem worship from the left doesn't make it any better. But none of that makes any sort of violence against her husband acceptable. And trying to twist the story into some sort of gay prostitution scandal based on literally nothing because it serves your political interests is pretty scummy, guys. Paul Pelosi actually did nothing wrong. He's not responsible for anything his wife did. He's certainly the victim of what DePape did. And let's hope DePape is locked up for the rest of his life like the shitheel he is. Okay, listen. You're watching this on release at 8:30 p.m. EST. Tonight, I'm doing, finally, after like over a month of not doing it, the community movie nights. You're in the $5 club? Get yourself into the Masterpiece Theater or watching a movie tonight. I'll see you there, guys. I love you.